What's up guys, welcome to another YouTube video. A few weeks ago I posted a video about what's in my camera bag, wedding photographer edition. A few of you reached out and said, can you do a wedding videographer edition? And yeah, absolutely. Here I am today to talk about exactly what I need to go out and shoot a wedding video. Let's go. So when I'm tasked with shooting a wedding video, 9 times out of 10, I'm actually shooting photo as well as video. So that kind of plays a role in exactly what I need to go and shoot a wedding. When I shoot all the weddings that I do, I'm partnered up with my business partner, Tim. Me and Tim's been friends for years, ever since we started university. And we kind of learned how to do photography and videography together. Now, time for just a quick shameless plug. And we've recently launched a new wedding business together called Dji and Guy Wedding Visuals. You can head over to Instagram if you wish to check us out. Up until recently, we've kind of never really advertised that we did wedding photography or videography, apart from a little bit on our website, but never used any adverts, never really pushed it as such. And then we recently got into a discussion as to whether we should put both businesses together under one name and put some money behind it and see how far we could take it. So introducing Dji and Guy Wedding Visuals. So we both shoot with the same kind of gear, so this video covers everything that we both really use. So to begin with, we're talking about the actual camera bag. As before, we use the Lowepro ProTactic 450. I've got the version 1, he's the posh boy and got version 2. They may not be the most stylish bags to turn up to a wedding with, but they have plenty of space to put multiple bodies in, multiple lenses, and still have some space left over for any other vital things you may need. So the primary cameras we shoot with is the Sony A7 Mark Iii. These are just really great hybrid cameras for us to use, especially because we're doing photography and videography. And because they shoot up to 4K 120 full frame and 10-bit color, then we have no issues when it comes around to editing and making sure we get the most cinematic look possible. The second bodies we shoot with is the Sony A7 Mark III. Between us, with just them 2 camera bodies, we can cover a whole wedding in terms of videography, but we also have an A7 Mark III, which is mine, which I use for wedding photography as well when I'm shooting. And that just helps us out if we have to cover the wedding from a third angle on the rare occasion, or if one of the cameras actually goes down, we can jump onto that. And yes, the quality isn't 100% there, the same as the A7S III, but it will still allow us to get the job done. That's where the new A7 IV will be coming in the next few months. Regarding lenses, we both shoot on a 24-70 f2.8 G Master. Now, any 24-70, roughly around 2.8, will still do the same job as the G Master. I highly recommend getting an f2.8 over the f4, because obviously if you're shooting indoors, then you need as much light as possible to make sure you can shoot at a lower ISO. Obviously, partner that up with the Sony A7S III using its dual native ISO, and you are golden, my friend. The other lens that we have, and we only ever take one of these, is the 70-200 f2.8, and we only use this on maybe one time throughout the whole wedding day, and that is the speeches. Why the speeches, I hear you ask? Well, normally we have a tripod set up at the back of the room with a camera on and the 70-200, and that allows us to shoot the actual speeches and get all the profile shots we need of the people actually doing the speeches, which we then use to tell the story of the wedding day. Normally whilst Tim's manning that, I'm around taking photos, and I use the Sony A7S III to get slow motion shots just to help fill in the gaps with just general B-roll. Now, prime lenses are amazing when it comes to videography in general, but the reason we don't shoot using prime lenses is because we don't have the bodies to be able to do that. And because a lot of the time we shoot hybrid, then it just makes more sense to use a zoom lens so we can get 2 different looks in the same kind of video from the one camera. Now, when we transition to using the A7 IV over the A7 III, or if we was to get a second A7S Mark III for each of us, then things may be a little bit different, and we probably shoot on a 35 and an 85 or a 24 and an 85. But until that point, we see no problems using the 24-70 2.8s. So obviously, because we're talking about video, then we are going to need some variable ND filters. For that, we use none other than the Polar Pro and Peter Mckinnon variable ND filters. We have both the 2-5 and the 6-9 stops, which allows us to cover any kind of situation where we may need to just stop down on the light. These filters are amazing because they cause very little vignetting, and because they're hard stop variable ND filters, then you don't get the dreaded cross. And the last thing you want to do is lose your train of thought, get back to the computer to start editing, and realize you've gone ever so slightly too far and you've got the X starting to show. That's when you need to start worrying, and we've never had a problem with Polar Pro variable ND filters, so highly recommend them. When it comes to batteries, obviously you have to have the batteries which fit the camera, but we take a total of 6 each, which covers us for all of our cameras. But we also take chargers with us, so as we use the batteries, then we start charging them just in case we was to somehow run out of the charge in the ones we've already got ready. But luckily, touch wood, it's never happened yet. So when it comes to storage and memory cards for the cameras themselves, we use SanDisk V30s for the A7 III should we need them, because that allows us to film 4K still. But when it comes to the A7S Mark III, then we use the ProGrade V90s at 128 gigabytes each. All the footage which we record throughout the day is recorded simultaneously onto both card slots in the camera, and that just stops any of the footage being lost should one of the cards fail. Once again, touch wood, that's never happened, but you definitely don't want to have to be dealing with that, because it isn't like you can just turn around to them and say, excuse me, can we just go back 2 hours and start again, please? That's when you get into very hot water, so just be stress-free, take some extra memory cards, and just record onto 2. Trust me, for all the money you will spend on the V90 memory cards, that doesn't come close to having to deal with a very unhappy couple when you've lost half of the wedding day. Just to let you know, I'm not speaking from experience there, but I do know photographers and videographers where that's happened. Don't be one of them. So due to the great stabilization in the Sony A7 Mark III, a lot of the time we can shoot freeheld for a lot of it. But for any of the big cinematic gliding shots that we may need, we use a Dji Ronin S. And let's not forget the little cable which goes from the gimbal into the camera to allow you to press the record button from the gimbal itself, because that is really convenient. So here's a story for you. I actually lost my cable for around about 6 months, went on plenty of issues, never thought about actually replacing it, always found myself having to one-hand the gimbal whilst pressing the record button, and it just made things a little bit annoying and inconvenient. And I swear, I promise, I checked everywhere. And then one day I emptied my camera bag, and sure enough, there it is, just staring at me. I've already mentioned that we use a tripod when we're filming the speeches from the back of the room. So the tripod we use is just a really cheap one, which I got off eBay. It probably cost me around about 25, maybe 30 pounds when I first got it, but it's just a Zomi. As long as it isn't cheap plastic and it's actually like an aluminium or steel frame or carbon fiber frame, then you should be okay to go with that. But one feature I will say that you should get on a tripod is to have the telescopic top. Is that what you call it? Like the bit where you can unscrew it and you can obviously raise it up and down. There's some tripods out there which don't have that feature and you have to extend the legs to make it higher, but obviously doing that makes the legs actually get further and further apart, which may not be suitable if your wedding venue hasn't got much space for you to work with. But remember, you need to be able to shoot over people's heads to get to the front of the room. So if your tripod hasn't got that feature, then you have to unlock all 3 legs and maneuver everything around to make it higher or lower, and then lock everything off and then make it all stable again and level, and it's just a lot of faff. But with the tripod I've got, you just unscrew it, lift it up or lower it, lock it off, and job's a good one. So on to audio. Now, audio at weddings is possibly the hardest part to actually capture. And there are a few ways to go about it, and if I'm honest, I don't think either of us have actually found a definitive way of actually capturing the best audio at every single wedding, because every wedding venue is slightly different to the next. Some wedding venues actually provide a PA system of some kind, so people have a microphone which goes to a bunch of speakers in the room for the speeches to easily be heard by all of the guests. At which point you could take a recorder such as the Zoom H4, and then you can take a feed directly from the desk using one of the auxiliary channels. And to do that, you'll just need a short XLR to XLR cable or a 1/4" jack to XLR cable. Now sometimes they have a microphone which goes to like a little karaoke speaker thing, which isn't great whatsoever. So in situations like that, you can get a recorder and we just put it in the room to pick up the ambient sound, but you do pick up the reverberations and the acoustics of the room. The third option when it comes to recording audio is to use lapel mics. The lapel mics that we use are the Rode Wireless Go's. What we've done in the past is sometimes clip the lapel mic to the actual microphone they're using to speak to the guests, and that just allows you to pick up direct feed straight from their voice. That's really useful if you've only got one lapel mic, because you don't want to have to go around micing everyone up in between speeches. But if you've got multiple lapel mics, then by all means go and mic up the people that you need to have mic'd up to do the speeches, and make sure you find out who them people are and what order they're going in before the actual day. One thing to look out for when you're doing weddings though is sometimes people like to make unannounced speeches. I've been to weddings before where you've had the best man speak, the groom speak, and then the father or the bride speak, and then all of a sudden someone else wants to have a speech. But that extra speech will be something that you need to capture, because when delivering the actual video, what if the couple turn around and say, "Oh, did you get so-and-so's speech?" Yeah, about that. So you need to be able to think on the fly, and that's why having a lapel on a microphone is much easier than having a lapel on each person. And not only that, it makes it a lot cheaper because lapel mics can easily cost you £200 to £300 each. Then what I do with the audio from the lapel mic is actually feed that straight into the Zoom H4. And then what I do in post is sync the audio and the footage from the camera up to the audio from the Zoom H4. Then all you gotta do is mute the audio from the camera and then you're good to go. Now, why don't I feed the audio directly into the camera? Well, what if you need to change memory cards halfway through? Or what if you need to change battery halfway through? You may miss around about 20 seconds of the speech, but then 20 seconds may be something that you need. Now, the footage isn't too much of a problem because you will have B-roll throughout the whole day where you could fill in the gaps and no one will be any the wiser. Not only that, but with the Zoom H4, you can actually take a multi-track recording. So you can have the feed coming from the lapel mics, but you can also use the ambient mic to pick up the reaction of the guests. Then when it comes around to post, you just mix the two audio feeds together to get a nice sound. The last few things I pack in my bag is extra cables, so that could be USB-C cables, it could be micro USB cables, sometimes even a phono cable will always come in handy. And finally, the little bag which comes with me to every single shoot that I do, and that's my little bag of plates, screws, my Leatherman goes in there, and that can kind of get me out of any sticky situation. Obviously, there may be weddings that come up where you actually do need an extra piece of equipment or an extra camera, at which point you just hire that in, but you find that information out before you actually go to the wedding day. And that's it for me today. Thank you very much for joining me. If you want to watch the photography version of that, I'll leave a link down in the description box below. If you enjoyed the video, then please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Layers.